afternoon, whatever time of day it is that you are listening, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening. Today is the 26th of February of our Lord 2024. Welcome to yet another edition of the Coping Hour, hosted by Nicholas Hinkle, a.k.a. Motown Noah. Dodging those load management allegations on this fine Monday morning as we record at 8:30 sharp. 8:30 sharp on a Monday, we are here. If you didn't see, I made a community post on YouTube last night being like, hey, I'm dealing with a respiratory illness. I can't really speak, and I don't know. I mean, which I did tell. I let you guys know that might happen on Friday's episode. They're like, hey, I'm definitely starting to get sick, and if Monday's episode doesn't happen, it will happen on Tuesday. Well, I just want to sort of reiterate that sentiment last night, and then you guys were like, load management podcast. Oh, there goes my parlay. What does this mean? Are you still eligible for the Supermax this summer? You guys actually played along with the joke really well, and I appreciated it. But the load management comments I took really personally. Like, yes, full Michael Jordan. And I took it personally. Like, that was me last night. So I was like, okay, whatever I have to do, like, I'm going to record. So there's just a little bit more. Today is honestly the best that I felt in the last few mornings. But there is a little extra bass, a little extra timbre in my voice. And I can't really go that high. So it might be just sort of a more monotone episode. I might even cut it short if at a certain point it just starts to get the best of me. If I have to cough or anything, I might just censor it. Like, A, because bleeping a cough is really funny, and B, because that's disgusting and nobody wants to hear that. I can't really help it right now, though. Second thing up top before we start the show, I don't know if you can tell, we're moving. We're in the process of moving, so like everything's gone. If you guys could see what's going on in the background over here, and got like 50 mirrors right here, you know, all my art, all the decorations and stuff are gone. Moving will either be at the end of this week or in the middle of next week. Shouldn't really affect the show. If we move on Friday, then I'll just get an episode in the can ahead of time and, you know, release it when I need to, and we'll be good. Final thing before we actually jump into today's show is I just want to extend my appreciation to you guys for truly the warmth that you showed me for the 30th episode. I realize in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's an arbitrary number to be doing like an anniversary, but you know, at the risk of sounding like I'm doing the exact same spiel, I'll make it a little shorter this time. It mattered to me, and so it mattered to you guys, and that's not nothing, and that means a lot to me. That like it validated me, and you guys know how much I need that in believing that what we were doing is awesome, and I really appreciated it. You guys went nuts for that episode. In the comments and in emails, like the amount of emails that were just like, hey, congrats, like you host a real show now. It wasn't even a question or anything. It was just that. I was like, yeah, we do, don't we? Alrighty, folks, let's jump into today's show. Victor Wembanyama. It's time. I haven't said like a word about him since we started the show, since the NBA season started. Just haven't really talked about him. There is not a reason why, because on most nights, much like all of you, I've kind of been like, huh? You're like, what? And that sort of reached a boiling point against the Lakers when he put up a 5x5 game, the 15th player in NBA history to do that. Is the most shocking thing about that is it's the 15th time that it's happened, a 5x5 game in the NBA. 6 of them are Hakeem Olajuwon. 3 of them are AK-47. And Karolinko is technically of my time, but I guess I just don't really remember watching him play that much. I remember playing with him in 2K more than I remember watching him in real life. Didn't know he had 3 of those. Good for him. Hakeem having 6, that makes sense. Victor Wembanyama probably going to be up there somewhere in between that 3 and 6 by the time his career is done. Achieving his first just the other night, the youngest player to ever do it in NBA history. And I think we're all just kind of left with the same sentiment of like, oh, holy shit, this is real. Not that we really needed this game to figure that out and to come to that conclusion, but it was this moment of like, okay, if you can do it against LeBron, you can do it against the Lakers, you can do it, you know, on this stage that is Staples Center or Crypto.com Arena. I don't care if it's sort of a down, if it's quote unquote over for the Lakers. I don't care. Like, it's still Los Angeles. Those lights are always going to be a little bit brighter. The irony is that at a Laker game, the lights are actually dimmed. So they're not actually that bright. If you want the lights to be bright in Los Angeles, go to a Clipper game because they turn the house lights on for that. Which is horseshit. I get why they do it, of course. We all know why the Lakers do it, whatever. Jacob, a.k.a. Rusty Buckets, recorded a video about this yesterday, and he brought up some interesting points, and I'm kind of going to piggyback off of them. One specific one that he was talking about is, you know, when you dive into who the face of the league is going to be in the NBA moving forward. Once LeBron is out of here, once Steph is out of here, once all these guys kind of make their way out of the league, we're going to have a really decent crop of guys that we can look at. And I don't think we're going to immediately anoint someone. I don't think we're just going to, by default, say, it's this guy now. You're going to have to earn it, and I think that's something that Jason Tatum was talking about recently, where he's like, hey, man, like, I think it's up for grabs once these guys are out of the league, and I think it's kind of mine for the taking. I think he's in the mix. I think he's one of the people that we're going to end up having a conversation about. But again, I don't think we're going to immediately look at him because I think it's really dismissive of some of the other guys in the league. I would also argue, and maybe this is what you would say too, in order to be the face of the league, you need to have that mentality of like, no, fuck that, it's mine. Like, I'm going to go grab it. Let's ask Anthony Edwards. Let's check in on Anthony Edwards on who he thinks the face of the league is going to be. You know what I mean? Because if you ask Jokic, it's not going to be him. Well, first of all, he's not old, but he's a little too old to be, in the conversation of what we're talking about now. But, hypothetically, if you did ask a guy like him, he's going to be like, I literally don't care at all. Not good. That guy can't be the face of the league. I don't care how good he is, right? If you ask Luka, I don't know if he would care that much, but I do think he's one of the guys that we would be talking about here. I think it's probably going to be easiest for that to just be Victor Wembanyama. No. One of the points that Jacob brought up, if you think about it through the lens of like who is the most marketable, well, that's probably the guy who just secured that Louis Vuitton partnership. Not that that has anything to do with basketball, but it's not nothing. As like a 19-year-old, that's not nothing. It's also probably the guy, and maybe it's just because it's his rookie year and they just want to wheel him out to all these events and, people can get eyes on him and hear him speak for some of us the first time on camera. If you're sort of a fair weather fan, maybe you haven't seen a ton of his interviews. And All-Star Weekend was sort of a good way for the league to stage him a little bit, right? And they did that. I mean, he was on inside the NBA panel, I think, twice. Even dropped a nice F-bomb on live television. I read something interesting about that. And I guess it's like a language thing where, and maybe I'm just completely naive, and maybe I'm gonna sound like an asshole. This is completely wrong. But I guess in French, there's like not a word for fuck, and the word that they use sort of interchangeably means to love or something like that, to kiss, to love. It's something like that. And so he just kind of threw it out there, and I guess the speculation was that he just kind of, not that he didn't know any better, he's a grown man, but he's also a kid. I don't know. This isn't even worth bringing up. He said fuck on national television, and it was hilarious, and everybody just kind of let it slide because it was, A, really funny, B, a Popovich story, and C, adorable, somehow really endearing. But the other thing that the NBA did is something we mentioned in the previous episode. When the NBA, again, I don't know if this is the first time they ever did it, like we talked about the other day, what the fuck is this NBA Tech Conference? Please don't ever do this again. I'm going to throw up. But who did Adam Silver bring out? He brought out Victor Wembanyama. So I think there is a clear effort to try to make people aware of who this guy is. If not through what he does on the court, then where he is off the court, right? I also think it's going to be really hard. Well, here's my biggest thing. That point didn't even matter. When we think about LeBron, the guy who has been the face of the league in the NBA for the last 20 years, one of the things that is the most like profound and astonishing about his career is his ability to live up to and exceed doesn't even do the word justice, and to do the circumstance justice, but for lack of better phrasing, to exceed those expectations that were placed on you from when you were like a 14-year-old kid. There's not really a comparison here. In like the 4 major sports in America, there hasn't been a pressure on a player like that. And to completely blow that shit out of the water the way that LeBron has. The closest thing that we've had since then, guys will come out of college. The Zion hype was huge, and now what has that become? What has Zion's career become? He is perpetually overhated despite being awesome. But because he's kind of gone through this weird transitional period from Duke to the NBA, where whether he's hurt, maybe he's people saying he's gaining too much weight, that he's eating too much. Even Zion himself has been like, yeah. He's like, you give a 19-year-old a shit ton of money and you put him in New Orleans. What do you want him to do? Not drink Mountain Dew. You just can't do that. Zion. Even I'm getting to an age as somebody who just sits at his fucking computer all day. I will never buy like a 12, like a pack, like a 12er of Mountain Dew ever again. I can't do that. As a treat, every now and then, I will get like a Code Red. I'll get a Voltage from like the gas station. But the acidity that comes with that, you just feel fucking gross. Right? So come on, Zion. No more Mountain Dew. Where the hell was I going? What was I talking about? What was I talking about with that? Was it just the expectation thing? Well, here's the thing with Victor. I sound like Jerry Seinfeld. Here's the thing with Victor. That's not a Jerry Seinfeld impression. I sound schizophrenic right now. I need to reset. I need to do like a hard reset. And we're back. My question is this. If Victor Wembanyama is playing under 30 minutes a game for like most of the time, like we're hardly even letting this dude off of the leash, which they said that was going to be the case this year. Popovich was very clear, especially early on. He's like, capital M, capital R, minutes restriction, bolded, italicized, underline. Like, we want to make sure this guy is okay because he's got a thin frame. It wasn't uncommon for people to think, yeah, he might end up being really good, but his first year in the NBA might be a little rough, and he might kind of get pushed around a little bit, especially under the basket. Like, some dudes are probably going to back him down to the rim, and, like, it's going to be over. It has happened. It has happened. We can be honest about it. But for the most part, we're looking at Victor Wembanyama, and we're like, holy shit, every single night. Like, what's going to happen when this guy is able to play, like, 35 minutes, 36 minutes a game? It's remarkable that Joel Embiid has had the career that he has had with the injuries that he was having early on in his career where he literally just couldn't get into the game for like 2 years. He just could not play a game. And so far, so good with Victor Wembanyama in that department. I guess the difference is it's kind of almost the inverse. It's almost the exact opposite circumstances where Victor Wembanyama doesn't have any weight on him at all, and it's hard to when you're that big. And Joel Embiid like had too much, and that was because it was foot injuries, right? I think that was derailing him, or was it? It was foot injuries, and I think maybe there's some back injuries, or unless I'm just conflating him and Ben Simmons. But with Joel Embiid, I'm pretty sure it was foot injuries, right? That has a lot to do with weight. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I was like, just kind of offhandedly, I threw something out there about Joel Embiid being like 260, and one of you guys in the comments was like, "Dog, he's like 280. What are you talking about?" And I read that, I was like, "What?" Like, huh? I Google it. Google had him listed at 285. What? And we know that the NBA historically lies about heights and weights, right? Not the NBA specifically, but just these teams will lie about heights and weights. There's that thing at All-Star Weekend about, like, it was Shea and Luka were kind of standing right next to each other in like a layup line. And isn't Shea listed at like 6'6" and Luka's listed at 6'7"? But there was at least like a 3-inch difference between them. So somebody's lying. And I would be more inclined to believe that Shea is actually smaller than what he's listed as, rather than Luka is actually like fucking 6'10". I don't believe that at all. But back to the Joel Embiid weight thing. I mean, okay, so the guy's 285. He's listed at 285. So that either means he is closer to 260, and he's probably somewhere in that like 265, 270 range, and they're just like bumping it. I don't really know why they do that. Or he's actually closer to 300. Huh? This is like when LeBron was in Miami. And then I don't remember if it was his last year in Miami or the first year that he went back to Cleveland. When he's in Miami, he's listed at 240, right? And then, again, the situation that I just mentioned, I don't remember what year it was, but they're like, yeah, LeBron James just slimmed down. He's lost about 40 pounds. Like, he's going to be more agile. And then the season starts, and they're like, LeBron James, 6'8", 240. I'm like, the fuck? Was LeBron in Miami playing, like, close to 300 pounds? Because that is fucking terrifying. That's insane. Victor Wembanyama is never going to get up there, and he doesn't need to. He does not need to do that, especially with the way that he moves right now. I just don't know if there's a guy in the league who you just watch on some of these defensive possessions, something that we do not talk about on this show. We can talk about like how easy he makes it look on offense all the time. But like some of these rejections that he gets are fucking disgusting. And it doesn't even look like he's trying. Like, he's almost, like, inconvenienced at how easy this thing is about to be to, like, swat off of the backboard. Like, huh? And when you talk about in the future, you know, if you could bet, I'm sure you can through some affiliated partner, I'm sure you can bet on who the next player to get a quadruple-double in the NBA is going to be. let's just rattle off a few right now and kind of talk about it. So obviously you're going to put Victor Wembanyama on that list, and I think for a lot of people, that's who they would put money on. I think he would probably be the odds-on favorite behind a guy like probably Jokic. But with Victor Wembanyama, it's like, okay, yeah, points, not worried about it. Rebounds, not worried about it. Assists, not worried about it, but like sneaky, is it more likely that he gets 10 blocks and 10 steals rather than the 10 assists? And if you're going to tell me, brother, I can kind of see him doing all 5. Are we talking about a quintuple double? Let's not do that right now. Let's not do that right now. Because there's just no way that's ever going to happen. Although it did just happen in, was it a women's high school player? If it was an actual college, it was a really small school. Like D6. I don't know what it was. But there was a woman who just had a quintuple double. The highlights are insane. It's bizarre. But staying on track here, because I'm running long and this one has kind of gone all over the place. Jokic, it's like, yeah, I don't need to explain this. He's MVP. Yeah, Jokic would be on there too. Giannis, I don't think so. I don't think so because points, yes. Rebounds, yes. Assists, probably not. Blocks and steals, like 10 apiece. I just don't see it. Luka, points, yes. Rebounds, yes. Assists, yes. And then blocks, hell no. Could he get 10 steals in a game? No. He just can't. Let me give you, and there are other players. There are other players that I'm just not going to mention here. But can I give you one final one? Sneaky. And this is just so you know that I'm being fair, because I historically don't like this guy. But if it's like the playoffs, you think it's like Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, doesn't it feel like Jimmy Butler would go out there and do some shit like that? And he would make it known that he's going to do it. Like, Jimmy would go to the press before the game, especially if it was against, like, Milwaukee, and he would be like, watch this. Watch what's about to happen tonight. And he would either be super vague about it, so that way any cool thing that he does, he would be like, see, I told you that was going to happen. Like, pussy, shut up. Sorry, Grandma. I know you're back listening to this episode. My grandma didn't listen to the 30th episode because I told her not to in the episode before that. And then it turns out the 30th episode, I didn't even say anything that crazy. We talked about Navalny dying. That's probably the craziest thing that we talked about. Anyways, back to Jimmy Butler being the worst. Or he would straight up call his shot, and he was like, I'm giving them a quadruple double. Like, this is what's going to happen. I wouldn't be shocked. Because the segment that I thought about doing today, and then I didn't, so it's not happening. Don't worry. Well, not don't worry. Don't expect it. I thought about doing like an all-NBA bad vibes team and throwing a bunch of players on there that I just think their vibes are horrible. And whether you'd want to agree with me or not, I would put Jimmy Butler on this list. But the nice thing that I would say about him, and if I do end up doing this list, I'm going to repeat this, is if nothing else, here's what Jimmy Butler does. He always backs up his shit, and he always tells you what he's about to do. Like, win or loss, he owns that shit, and I really respect that part of his game. Where I don't know if there's anybody in the league who can back up the shit talking more than Jimmy Butler, but his vibes are still horrible. And I do think sneaky, he would be like plus 7,500, but I think sneaky, I would put Jimmy Butler on the list for quadruple double candidates. Let's move on. This segment's going to be like 5 different things. This is happening in real time. The Clippers just unveiled. I'm not going to put it on the screen because I'm a bad host. By the time this episode comes out, you've probably already seen it anyways. The Clippers in real time 17 minutes ago just unveiled like their sort of branding change when they moved to this new arena. Hate the new logo. I think it could grow on me. I don't really like it though. Uniforms are cool. I like the uniforms. Good for the Clippers for bringing back the red. Paul George recently kind of alluded to the fact that they were going to bring back the red, and I know a lot of people are excited about that. So, hey, there you go, Clippers fans. You guys got a really nice new arena. Really excited and curious to see how the wall is going to work. That section where it's like only season ticket holders, I think is what it is, right? And you have to be a Clipper fan. You cannot wear an opposing team's colors or jersey or anything like that. Really curious to see how that's enforced and how that works. Because I think it's a really cool concept. Feels like something you would see in college sports more than you would see in professional sports. So that's what I'm just curious to see how because that some like annoying TikToker is going to be like, I wore one of those double-sided jerseys to a Clipper game and they kicked me out parenthetically, cops called, like someone's going to do it and it's going to be cringe and it's going to be annoying. Another thing I meant to mention in the Wemby thing, we got an email here from Jackson, really short and sweet. He goes, I'll cut to the chase. Jackson, welcome to the show. I'll cut to the chase. If the Spurs offered Victor Wembanyama right now the largest contract extension in the history of basketball, who says no? Wemby's camp or the Spurs front office? I don't think either of them would say no. If they were allowed to do that, obviously they're not allowed to do that. Right now, I think both would say yes. I think, like, amicably, this relationship just works. I think it just makes sense. Something that Jacob had mentioned was, what if they trade for Trae Young in the summer? I'm going to be devastated if that happens, as a guy who just historically, it's just something. I acknowledge how good he is, and I recognize that. I'm not like a hater, but I will never go out of my way to like veer credit in his direction. It's just a vibes thing. I just don't really like him. But he is really good, and that's why it would devastate me, is because of how much I like Victor Wembanyama, how much I like a lot of the guys that the Spurs have. I like Sohan a lot, actually. A lot of people don't. I like him a lot. But if you add Trae Young to that team, I do think there's a chance, right? They can make some noise in the playoffs. But what it would end up being is if this, Trae Young and Victor Wembanyama play 82 games and they're like the 5 seed, the 4 seed, whatever it is, it's going to be one of those situations where, early on in that relationship, they're going to need the good teams to take care of each other. It's going to be about seeding. In that situation where they cannot play the heavy hitters every single round, they're going to need some other teams to do the work if they would want to make some noise in the playoffs. But that's so far down the line that, we don't need to talk about this too much. I just thought it was an interesting question. Another thing, not to just make this not to make this today's show about just a bunch of shit that Jacob, a.k.a. Rusty Buckets, talked about in yesterday's video, a video that I thought was very good and everybody should go check out. On also Rusty Buckets, title of the video is, Where Does Victor Wembanyama Rank in the NBA? I thought it was very good. But in that video, he also spent a little bit of time talking about Brandon Miller and how, early on, people were like afraid to admit how good they thought he was going to be. When the draft came around and the Hornets decided they wanted Brandon Miller, not Scoot Henderson. First of all, it did throw a lot of us for a loop. I think a lot of us thought the way that Scoot played he played for the Ignite, right? The G League Ignite. I think it was like he was such a violent player that it was like impossible to think that it wouldn't translate to the NBA. And not that it hasn't, but in some ways it hasn't, especially in the first like month of the season when he sucked. He was also hurt, though, I think is what it was. And then he came back and was like, I wear goggles now, and he was kind of sweet. So he's getting on, back on the right track, but so is Brandon Miller. Why are we burying the lead here? We can just be honest about why people were afraid to admit that Brandon Miller might be a good NBA player. It was because he was wearing a fucking murder charge around his neck. Sorry, an accessory to murder charge around his neck. And it was like a little weird to be like, I think this guy is going to be amazing. It's the same reason that people don't want to, it's because he's a punter and who cares. But like Matt Ariza is amazing, right? But you feel a little bit awkward and uncomfortable talking about how good he is when he was going through a sexual assault trial. I'll phrase it that way, right? It was a little uncomfortable to talk about that. And when Brandon Miller like goes to the combine and he's going through the draft process, and his camp was like, you cannot ask about this. Now, of course, that was for legal reasons. They weren't just, deflecting and being negligent to the fact that it was a real thing, but they were like, do not talk to us about this. It was a weird feeling. I think that's kind of all that it was, because he popped on tape. It was not an issue of the battle of the tape. Like, Brandon Miller won that battle. But when it was like, so why did you give your friend this gun? Why did you have this gun? Like, all this shit. Like, did you know what he was about to do? Like, the vibes were weird. But what happens in the NBA? We forget. Once shots start to fall, we forget. So moving on, back to an actual email here. This one's a little bit long, so I'm going to kind of try to skim through it. It's from Gabriel. Gabriel, welcome to the show. This is a lot here. I am, as of recently, a youth basketball, tennis, and badminton coach for different schools in the Bay Area. And I am a Kansas/Chicago sports fan. I'm also a diehard Celtics and Arsenal fan, but neither of those have ever really become an issue. My athletes, however, some of whom are as young as 4 years old, are almost unanimously Niners fans, saying bang, bang, Niner game whenever the opportunity arises. Here's the issue. I want to support these kids' hometown allegiances, but many of them have proposed the idea of becoming Chiefs fans, both because they won the Super Bowl and because they are one of the coach's favorites. I don't want to influence these kids to root against a team that would otherwise be a lifelong favorite for them, but I also selfishly relish the feeling of converting as many recently defeated Niner fans into Andy Reid disciples as I possibly can. Any advice? Also, okay, why don't we start with that first? But I do kind of want to touch on something else that he mentions here. Yeah, man, do that. Because ultimately they're kids, right? Whatever team they're like, quote unquote, supposed to root for, they'll find their way home, or their parents will smack them upside the head and be like, you're not a Chiefs fan. Like, get the hell out of here. When you're a kid, you're just drawn to like whatever is the most exciting. Like growing up, I just loved Lovie Smith. I loved Brian Urlacher. I loved Charles Tillman, Devin Hester, Rex Grossman, Muhsin Muhammad, Cedric Benson. I loved the Bears. I was a sicko for the Bears. Do you think my dad, as a Lions fan, loved that? No. But he was like, you know what, man? If this is what you like, if this is what you love, then for a little bit you can be a Bears fan. And what ended up happening? I found my way home. You know, so that's the short version of it. Like, go for it. If these kids want to, first of all, if it's a funny bit to you to make all of these kids Chiefs fans, go for it. It's super harmless. Like, nothing bad actually comes out of this. And it's a way for you to kind of bond with these kids in a way and become their favorite coach, right? And it gives you guys something to talk about. You can kind of talk to them about, you know, your journey. Because it's funny, they don't want to be Bears fans. They don't want to be like Blackhawks fans. They don't want to be Cubs fans. They should be Cubs fans, though, not Sox fans. They're like, we want to be Chiefs fans. Go for it, dude. But there's something else that he mentioned in here. And I'm not going to read what his version of this was. I apologize here, Gabriel. But there was a note in here that he goes, also, since you do touchy-feely content now, which I really like, but I think it's verging on being somewhat, but I'm being something that saturates your content. I'll throw in a nugget. Yeah, but I'm not going to read it. I've been meaning to bring this up for like 2 episodes now. We are going to pull back on Friday Feels for a myriad of reasons. And I'm not trying to like make anybody feel bad. It's nothing that anybody specifically did. But I've alluded to this a little bit that, first of all, I do agree that I 100% agree that it does kind of saturate the content a little bit because I'm not equipped to deal with like half of the ones that I actually read. I only read them because I feel like there is like an inherent responsibility to try to make a person feel better when their circumstances are what they are in whatever email that it is. But the truth is, I'm literally just a guy. I'm not like I don't know a lot. And when my advice usually ends up being like kind of the same thing for 3 straight emails, I can understand why people wouldn't really want to hear that. I think, and I've always wondered how a guest would work on this show. There are 2 reasons why I haven't had one yet. One, who the fuck am I going to get? You want me to like text Luke Kennard? He's going to be like, shut the fuck. No, I'm not doing this show. Like, no. Jacob, you want me to bring on Rusty Buckets? He's going to be like, hell no. Well, I know he would do it. But, well, maybe that could work. But I think for some of these emails, it would almost work better if there was somebody else on a microphone to kind of play off of a little bit, to kind of add a different perspective that isn't just me being like, oh, you have a girlfriend who you want to get into sports, and then I just explain the same thing that I've already said to like 6 other people, you know? Also, because if I can be candid, sometimes it's just too fucking heavy. Sometimes I'm just like, damn, this, like, I don't want to say ruined my week. This is what I'm saying. I'm not trying to alienate anybody specifically, but it's like, damn, guys, like, wow, this is a lot. So I do think you guys are still allowed to send them in, be as heavy as you want. Just know I think we got to figure something else out on how to do it. I straight up thought about doing like a separate show for it. I don't think that would go well, and I don't think I need to do that. I think maybe it'll just be, instead of a weekly thing, sometimes like an every episode thing, I think it'll just have to be like once or twice a month that we kind of get real and we get in our emotional bag. Because otherwise, again, I just don't want to run it into the ground and alienate people who maybe don't care about that part of it, and they're just here to listen to like funny sports takes and like Navalny getting killed in Siberia, like stuff like that. All right. let's move on. I don't know if I have like coronavirus or something, which I don't, but I keep forgetting to mention something that I was supposed to mention in the last clip. I meant to single out a specific person about what made me come to this conclusion of like, I don't think we should do Friday Feels anymore. We got an email from a woman who was like, I live in Michigan and I'm just feeling really stuck. Like, what do you do when you're in these creative ruts? And I was kind of going over in my head how I would respond to this email because it was really well written and I thought they brought up some really like relatable points. But when my entire 5-minute spiel turned into 10 minutes of me not even answering it and just kind of empathizing and being like, yeah, things suck, and like kind of just going over my own experiences, it just didn't feel helpful and it didn't feel constructive. And I feel like when you guys send in these heartfelt emails, I want to actually help you guys to the best of my abilities and not just kind of be an annoying voice in the room who's like trying to make it about me when it's supposed to be about you. You know what I mean? So, Jacqueline, if you're listening to this, your email was great. It is not about you at all. I just was like, I just don't want to, again, make this about me. So I apologize for not reading it on the show. We did get one that I thought was really, really funny from Matt. Matt, welcome to the show. Hey, Nick, huge congrats on 30 episodes. I'm glad to be watching a real show now instead of some indie garbage. That's pretty much what it was. I had a question about your outro. How do you do your, and I will catch you guys in the next one. I love the pause. It has some gravitas to it. So I was thinking about how you do it. Do you count in your head? Is it just a feel thing? Do you have the live music on a soundboard or is it added in post? That's the only part that I'm going to read because he goes on to talk about Boston sports telecasters and I think Scal sucks, Matt, is my take on everything that you wrote there. I'm sorry. I think Scal sucks. Everything that you wrote was beautifully nuanced. I just think Scal sucks. I thought that was a fascinating question. I didn't realize anybody ever thought about that. Yeah, it's all in post. It's all in post because how it used to work is I used to record in OBS. And I think in the first few episodes, it was live. Like I did just time it out really, really well. And then after that, I was like, why am I doing it this way? I'm making it so much harder on myself. And so I just say it at my own pace, and then I just time it in Premiere at the end. That's all that it is. And then there were also a bunch of other emails in here just to kind of veer off the road a little bit and not do some sports. A lot of emails over the last like week about music and stuff that I listen to. I remember there was one a month ago, and he was like, hey, Nick, I know you said you don't listen to rap. And it was like the episode after I said that I was listening to like a ton of Lil Yachty and a ton of Yeet. And I was like, huh? Like what? Like I do though. So I do think it would be a good time for me not to go through my Spotify Wrapped because A, that's horrible content. B, you guys would cringe. Like you would turn off you'd be like, whoa, what is going on here? Because you guys know that I love Taylor Swift. You guys know that I love Sabrina Carpenter, Olivia Rodrigo, my pop girlies. Like I'm here for that. But everything else that I listen to, this run that Lil Yachty has been on for like the last, like, I guess you could say year, whenever he dropped that psych rock album, that psychedelic rock album kind of changed the trajectory of his career. Good album. I think it was the attempt that I loved, the mixing on it. Some of the vocals were like kind of like, eh. But because of what he was going for and how hard of a left it was from what we have known from him in the past, that's what everybody, I think, loved about it so much. And then ever since then, like, dog, he just, like, wakes up some days and he'll just, like, drop something insane where he's, like, capital R, bolded, italicized, underlined, rapping. You know what I mean? He just came out with another one the other day, something Ether. I think it's actually it's literally right here. Yeah. Fucking nasty. Like, this dude is out of his mind with what he's making. And I don't even know what, like, the genre is with some of the stuff that he's doing. He's really in such a unique lane. So anything that Lil Yachty pumps out, like I'm front row, I'm listening to it day one. How about JPEG Mafia going on like just like unhinged rants on Twitter recently? Do I feel slightly targeted because it's all about white people? Not really, because some of the stuff he's saying is valid, but I think a lot of it is just that he's upset that most of his fan base is white. And I think maybe he resents that a little bit. You know who is the exact same way and doesn't really resent that at all? Danny Brown. Danny Brown makes fun of him, not makes fun of himself, but like jokes about that being a reality all the time. He's like, yeah, if white people didn't listen to my music, like I probably wouldn't have as much money as I do. You're welcome, Danny Brown, for listening to your music. That is something that sucked about getting my Twitter cooked. Like, actually, probably like 2 years ago now. It was late February in 2022 when I got perma-banned on Twitter. Is Danny Brown followed me. And we had even DM'd a few times because we were talking about getting him on the Bun and Cardigan show, the show I was doing with James before. We had briefly talked about it before, and then we had DM'd about some other stuff. And, like, Danny would, like my tweets, and he would, like, retweet my shit sometimes. Like, it was wild. Like, it was wild. And then the worst part, the day that my Twitter got banned, like 4 hours prior to it happening, Babytron followed me. And that was because of the Cade interview that we did and how I like shouted out Babytron in that, and I got Cade to shout out Babytron in that. I guess he must have seen the clip. So Tron followed me, and I was in a lift when it happened, and I like had to suppress my screams. And then the second I got out of the car to walk into the office, I started screaming my fucking head off. And one of my producers was walking down the street at the exact same time. He was just like walking in. And he just walks up on me like fucking pounding my chest, doing the silencer like a goddamn NPC, like just in the middle of the street. He's like, what the hell is going on here? And I was like, Babytron! And I like showed him my phone. Oh, that really hurt my voice. That was not good to do. But that's how excited I was, right? So I don't listen to every single song that Babytron puts out because the workflow that he has, it's like every day he's giving us like 64 bars. And you got to do your research to listen to him. That's his quote, right? He's like, you got to do your research to listen to Babytron. Because like some of the shit that he says, if you're not listening, you know, not to sound like an asshole, but if you're not listening, that shit's just going to go over your head. And sometimes with how fast he is. But I also don't understand how he doesn't get, like some of the beats that he'll flip. I don't, like he's done Harry Potter. He's done like fucking Star Wars. He's done Indiana Jones. Like this guy... And he's like not in jail for like, no, not that you would go to jail for flipping beats for like protected IP, but whatever. What else is in here? The Japanese House. The Japanese House is probably one of, if not my all-time favorite, not really band, but music group because it's technically just one single woman. And I've been listening to her for close to 10 years now, probably like 2015, 2016. I saw her open for the 1975 in 2016. And it was ever since then that I was like, whoa. Like, what is this? The 1975, you know, as they grow and as I grow, I sort of detach from them a little bit. Just because sort of creatively, every time they come out with an album, it's just not where my head is at. And we're just like kind of growing in separate directions. Whereas the Arctic Monkeys, for example, when I was growing up, I wasn't into them at all. But as I get older, they start to make shit that is like perfectly in my lane. The Car, for example, was an album that like it came out at a time that it was just perfect for like what my vibe was, for what my aesthetic was. There Better Be a Mirror Ball, honest to God, I think is going to go down as a top 5 song of the decade. Indescribable visuals on the video too. If we want to talk about a band, you know, if you're of a certain age, like if you're 20, you may have a band like this, you might not. But if you're like my age, you're 25, you're in your 30s, you know, wherever you are, do you have that band or that artist that you almost resent a little bit because they went from being really small to like they exploded and they were no longer your little secret anymore? And you're just like, it's not their fault. Like that's what you always wanted for them was for them to succeed. But for exclusively selfish reasons, you're kind of like, damn, I really enjoyed when, you know, it was smaller, intimate shows and when it was just like when I felt more seen and heard as a fan. And then they turn into, you know, the world's band. For me, that was 21 Pilots because I remember it was 2013 and I was coming home from school as a sophomore in high school and Vessel had just come out. My friend was playing some of it for me. I was like, what is this? Like, what is this? And then, you know, fast forward just a couple of months, they were so small at the time that they were on like a little spring tour and they didn't even come to Michigan. And so coincidentally, they, you know, during our school spring break, they were doing a show down in Indianapolis. So it was the first time I'd ever been to, or not the first, that's a lie. I don't need to lie about that. But we went down to Indianapolis to see them. and it was incredible. It was the first time I ever got to see them. And then by the end of it, I've seen 21 Pilots like probably like 4 or 5 times in person. And the last time that I saw them, I think was 2019. And it was this feeling of like, damn, that's it. Like, I just don't need to see them again. Because it's an arena. Like, we saw them at Van Andel in Grand Rapids, and it's just not the same. Like, first of all, I'll tell you this, man. You will not catch me in the pit. I won't be on like general admission floor tickets. Like, I just can't do that anymore. I would rather be up in the stands, even like if it's close, but just somewhere where I can sit down, because I just am not into standing for that long anymore. Like, I can't lean. I can't do anything. I just got to stand there, and then I just got to wait for like every 2 hours when like a water bottle gets passed back. You know what I'm talking about? When like 15 like lanes of water bottles get passed back and everybody gets to like waterfall like that much of it. And you're just like, damn, I wish I could have the whole thing. That's just not I just can't do that anymore. But it really sucked with 21 Pilots when Blurry Face came out and, Stressed Out was this huge hit. Because I remember that night when that released and I was like, whoa, like this is what we've been waiting for as fans. And like, is it happening? It happened. All right. So that sucks. Are there any other ones I can throw in here just really quick? Been listening to a lot of, well, that doesn't even count, honestly. Yeah, I'll just say those. And then everything else I listen to is just orchestral for the most part. A lot of Ludwig Göransson, a lot of Nicholas Bertel, Tyler Bates. I could do composers. That's a whole nother 10 minutes, honestly. Those are probably the main ones, though. Anyways, Natalie Holt is really talented as well. All right, let's wrap up the show. Let's move on. One issue that I've been having with the show is I have no idea what you guys find funny. And that's going to be the case with any YouTuber. Like, you can, do a bit and assume that, half of the people are going to laugh at this, or at the very least do like a nasal exhale. And that's not to say that there's been anything in this episode specifically that I've been like trying to make people laugh. But that's kind of how I do these shows. If we want to get into the psychology of it, like my talking points for any sport, but specifically the NBA, just since for all intents and purposes, that's basically what the show is about. If I had to make it about one sport, I always try to make it like an NBA show to the best of my abilities. When I talk about like certain players, I have a spiel like down to the syllable, and it's like my routine almost. I have the same Drew Eubanks spiel that I've been doing for like 3 years. If I bring him up, I'm going to say the same thing every single time. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but as soon as you start to hear it, you're going to be like, I've heard him say this before, right? Yes, you have. Because I know if somebody hasn't heard me say it before, I know it's going to make them laugh, right? That's how I do this. It's like material. I'm not talking about it from like an X's and O's perspective. I'm talking about shit from a perspective of, like, sometimes I'm saying it because I know it's like a smart point and it's like a right thing to say. Well, and I believe it, and I know it's right. But a lot of the time, it's like material. You know what I mean? And what sucks is when I've never done like an actual room before, and so I don't know what actually works and what actually doesn't. Because the only time I've ever had people in the room was when there was like 1 or 2 producers behind the camera, and like sometimes there'll be like a little chuckle or something, but also at the same time they're not really trying to laugh because that's not their job. It's not to laugh, it's to make sure that the show is going well. So that's always been real tough for me. And that's also not me asking you guys to be like, no, this part was really funny and this part was really funny. Because one of the emails that we read earlier, I think it was from Gabriel, at the very end, he was like, P.S. one of my exes thought your spiel on January 6th was really funny, so like keep it up. And I was like, first of all, which one? Like, which one? Second of all, your ex? What's that relationship like? What's that dynamic like? Like sending clips? Like, oh, first of all, it's either I'm sending you this January 6th clip, like you got to check this out. Or you're like, you got to check this show out, this whole show out. And then they got to the January 6th part. It was really funny, actually. Has my voice been annoying? It's really bothering me. So I apologize if this has just been like just a brutal experience. I'm in a lot of pain right now. Hey, Navalny's body got returned to his mother. That's cool. I honestly don't even know why I talk about him that much, because in the grand scheme of things, that guy, like, he was the voice for a voiceless Russia. in the face of a ruthless dictator that desperately needed an opposition group to support. But if you look at him through like a Western lens, he didn't really like brown people that much. There were a lot of things about him that were like morally questionable, but because of what he stood for on the surface, we're all kind of like, this guy fucking rules. So I just kind of want to cover my tracks here. You know what is weird, though? Oh, my God. Not to go all tinfoil hat, but, like, this actually happened. This is a real thing that happened. I don't know how many of you know this. If you listen to the show on Spotify, let me pull it up and you guys can kind of see. If you listen to the show on Spotify, up in the corner here, and this is, I guess, sort of a visual thing, up in the corner right there, there's like that little square, and it's almost like shorts, but for every single episode. And Spotify will segment like a random 60 seconds from every single episode to kind of give people a preview of what the show is about. And even though I don't always listen to the show, I'm always curious every single episode to see what 60 seconds Spotify decides to segment, right? Last week, for the 30th, I was kind of annoyed that for the first few hours after I uploaded it, the 60 seconds that Spotify segmented was my spiel on Navalny and him dying. And then my girlfriend came home from work, and obviously that's just really funny that if someone is like, oh, what is this podcast about? And they click it, and the most recent one is me being like, so Navalny dead in a Siberian prison. Like, what the fuck? I thought it says this is a basketball show. What is he talking about here? It's just inherently funny. So I get home, and I'm like, hey, sweetheart, like, you got to see this. Have you seen this? You heard about this? And I click it to show it to her, and they changed the clip. I don't have control over that. And if I do, I don't know how to do that. I didn't touch anything. But Spotify changed the clip from it being about Navalny to it being about, like, whatever it is now. I think it's actual basketball stuff. Weird. Because you know what they didn't change was from a few episodes ago, the clip is I'm wearing an orange hoodie and a black beanie. And I'm talking about how, like, the blue square is, like, bullshit. Not because the cause is bullshit, but because the posting blue squares thing is bullshit. That's insane. Like, it's performative activism, and it just perpetuates, like, a terrible narrative and, like, bad behavior, right? Go back and listen to the clip. I'm not doing the whole spiel again. That's still there. That's still up. Is that me? Is that just me? Or is that kind of weird? Why did Spotify change that? What did I do wrong? Whose list am I on? Does that mean the Kremlin listens to the show and that's why they're feeling so emboldened lately? Is because there's this, like, crucial intellectual mind of NBA YouTube who's, like, peddling, but it's like anti-Russian prop. So did Putin get on the phone to the Spotify headquarters and was like, you gotta do something about this? And my girlfriend was like, you're probably on their list now. And I was like, well, they're not going to come after me. And then I remembered the guy that they went after in Spain last week, but then also the guy that was living in Spain that got assassinated, like, just went to a part of Spain where, like, a bunch of, like, ex-KGB dudes lived. Like, he just went to a part that was, like, heavily populated by, like, Russian sympathizers. So he's just dumb, right? Are there a lot of Russian sympathizers in Chicago? I know there are a lot of Ukrainians, both from seeking asylum from the war and... Well, folks, if you're listening to this on Spotify, be sure to rate 5 stars. If you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe, nice little comment for the algorithm. I'm really sorry about my voice. I hope this is okay. I hope this was a good episode. I don't need to get in my head about this. I didn't load manage is basically what this comes down to. I did not succumb to the pressure. Scheduling is everything to me with podcasting. Consistency matters a lot, even if that means you pump out a shitty product. I will catch you guys. Here we go, Matt. Ooh, when am I going to say it, Matt? When is it timed? Ooh, how do I know when it's going to...
Now
in the next...
primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.